Analyst's booking room. Control versus belief. Drew McIntyre's road to SummerSlam. So Drew McIntyre's championship reign begins not with triumph, but with control. After escaping the cage against Cody Rhodes amid chaos involving Jacob Fatu, Drew doesn't pretend the victory was noble. He presents it as necessary. The message is simple. The world is unpredictable, and champions who hesitate don't last. That philosophy immediately reshapes the title picture. In Montreal, as we saw yesterday, Sami Zayn won the fatal four-way match against Damian Priest, Randy Orton, and Trick Williams by pinning Priest to become the number one contender. The victory feels earned, emotional, and organic. Montreal rallies behind Sami not because he's favored, but because he believes. For Sami, this isn't about shortcuts, it's about destiny. It's about persistence finally paying off. That belief carries him to the Royal Rumble, where he challenges Drew McIntyre for the championship in Saudi Arabia, a place where Sami is enormously popular and emotionally connected to the audience. The match is framed as the ultimate contrast. Sami's faith versus Drew's realism. Sami throws everything he has at a champion, and for moments, it feels like belief might finally break through, but history repeats itself. Trick Williams interferes, costing Sami the match. Drew retains the title, moving to 12-0 all-time against Sami Zayn. Crucially, Drew does not orchestrate the interference. He simply capitalizes on it. This matters. Drew doesn't celebrate. He doesn't gloat. He simply reinforces his worldview. Belief without awareness is vulnerability. Sami is devastated, but not broken. The same night, Cody Rhodes wins the Royal Rumble. With the no rematch clause still in place, Cody has done the only thing possible to earn another opportunity. He chooses Drew McIntyre for WrestleMania, not out of revenge, but out of unfinished business. As the road to WrestleMania unfolds, Jacob Fatu inserts himself into the championship picture. His involvement isn't random. Fatu nearly prevented Drew from winning the title in the cage, brawled with Cody, and represents a force that Drew cannot fully control. Tensions escalate between all three men, and as history is layered, motives are questioned, and chaos looms. Eventually, the match becomes unavoidable. Drew McIntyre versus Cody Rhodes versus Jacob Fatu for the championship at WrestleMania. Meanwhile, Sami Zayn redirects his pain. At WrestleMania, Sami faces Trick Williams in a personal grudge match. This isn't about titles, it's about closure. Sami defeats Williams cleanly, reclaiming his agency and proving that interference no longer defines him. That victory becomes the turning point of Sami's year. Drew retains the championship at Mania by pinning Jacob Fatu. The finish is decisive and symbolic. Cody hits a second and then goes for a third crossroads on Fatu. As Cody commits, Drew strikes him with a claymore, capitalizes on the opening and pins Fatu. Cody is protected, the chaos is neutralized, Drew leaves WrestleMania still champion, still in control. After WrestleMania, Drew McIntyre's leave with the championship, but not with peace. Pinning Jacob Fatu proves that Drew can survive chaos, but it doesn't erase it. Cody Rhodes never took the fall, and that matters. Drew doesn't brag about WrestleMania. Instead, he frames it as confirmation. Control works. He predicted the chaos, absorbed it, and walked out as champion. To Drew, WrestleMania isn't a triumph, it's validation. Sami Zayn's victory over Trick Williams is quieter, but just as important. This match isn't about revenge alone, it's about agency. For the first time since the Royal Rumble, Sami wins a high-stakes match where no one interferes. No one hijacks the moment, and no one takes it from him. Sami doesn't mention Drew afterwards. He talks about responsibility, about learning when to fight emotion and when to fight smart. From here, their paths diverge. Drew moves into the role of a governing champion. He isn't omnipresent, but when he speaks, it's deliberate. He defends the title selectively, choosing challengers who represent unpredictability, not belief. Drew's opponents in this stretch aren't dreamers, they're threats. Power wrestlers, wild cards, men who rely on momentum rather than patience. Drew beats them all, reinforcing the idea that chaos can be managed if you're willing to adapt early and strike decisively. Every win adds to Drew's confidence, but also subtly narrows his worldview. Each successful defense convinces him further that emotion is weakness and faith is naive. He doesn't mock Sami directly, but the subtext is clear. Drew believes he has already proven his philosophy correct. Meanwhile, Sami takes a different road. Sami doesn't immediately chase championships. Instead, he wrestles, often and against a variety of opponents, veterans, up-and-comers, styles that force him to adjust. Sami's promos during this period are introspective, not defiant. He talks about the royal loss openly, about being 0-12 against Drew, about how belief alone isn't enough if it blinds you. But here's the key difference. Sami doesn't abandon belief. He disciplines it. Instead of charging headlong, Sami begins picking his moments. He studies opponents. He survives matches he doesn't dominate. He wins some bouts ugly but clean. The crowd sees something new. A Sami Zayn who still fights with heart, but no longer with recklessness. Crucially, Sami and Drew do not interact during this stretch. That absence matters. Drew assumes Sami is done. Another good wrestler who couldn't evolve fast enough. Sami assumes Drew is unbeatable for now. Neither man needs to say it out loud. The audience feels it in the negative space. As weeks pass, subtle visual storytelling does the work. Drew is shown watching matches from backstage monitors, arms crossed, detached, confident. Sami is shown exhausted after wins, sitting on the apron, breathing hard, but nodding to himself. Control versus endurance. Then, the King of the Ring is announced. And that's when the air changes. For Drew, King of the Ring initially feels irrelevant. He's the champion. He doesn't need a crown. but this stipulation is unavoidable. The winner earns a world title match at SummerSlam. No cash-ins, no shortcuts, no ambiguity. For Sami, King of the Ring feels different from everything else. It's structured, it's earned, it's fair. This isn't destiny calling, it's opportunity presenting itself honestly. When Sami is inserted in the tournament, it isn't dramatic. He doesn't mention Drew. He doesn't talk about SummerSlam. He says one thing that reframes the entire arc. If belief is going to mean anything, it has to survive structure. That line is the thesis of the rest of the story. Drew hears it and just dismisses it. After all, he's beaten Sami 12 times. Why would the 13th be any different? And that quiet dismissal, not anger, not hatred, is what ultimately costs Drew everything. So here are the ideal opponents for Sami, for the King of the Ring. Round of 16. Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Theme of the match: respect versus emotion. This is the right opener. Nakamura is dangerous, unpredictable, and veteran savvy. He forces Sami to wrestle measured, not frantic. Sami nearly loses, but by trying to rally the crowd too early. Sami wins only after slowing the pace and countering, not chasing momentum. So the finish, a luva kick after blocking the Kinshasa. So the lesson learned in this match: belief must be controlled, not emotional. Then we get to the quarterfinal. Sami Zayn versus Damian Priest. Overcoming the ghost of opportunism. This is essential. Priest represents everything that hurts Sami and Drew alike. Timing, shortcuts, power. Priest mocks Sami for never taking the easy way. Sami survived. So during the match, Sami survives power spots and refuses to rush the finish. So the finish, roll up reversal into a decisive Eluva kick. Patience beats power when power expects panic. That's the lesson for this match. Semi-final, and this is a big one. Sami Zayn versus Randy Orton. Intelligence versus experience. This is the mental test. Orton dissects Sami's patterns. He tries to bait Sami into mistakes. Crowd is tense. This isn't explosive, it's surgical. Sami anticipates the RKO, but instead of reacting to it. Finish, RKO counter, Blue Thunder Bomb, Haluva kick. So the lesson Sami learns in this one is study and awareness neutralizes control. And here's the biggest match of all. Sami Zayn versus Gunther in the final. The theme is endurance versus absolutism. Now, we all know Sami is one of the few that defeated Gunther in a match at WrestleMania. So this is the coronation match. Gunther is the embodiment of inevitability. No chaos, no shortcuts, just punishment. Drew watches this match closely. So the key story beat, Sami refuses to stay down, not recklessly, but deliberately. So the finish, Sami survives a powerbomb, rolls through, traps Gunther in a modified crucifix pin. So the lesson he learns, belief doesn't break power, it outlasts it. So why does all these matches and this bracket work? Each opponent strips away one flaw Sami had earlier in the year. So in the round of 16, Nakamura removed the emotional overreach. In the quarterfinal, Priest removed the panic under power. Orton removed predictability. And the final, Gunther, he removed doubt under inevitability. By the end of the King of the Ring, Sami hasn't become sneaky. He hasn't become ruthless. He's become complete. Drew's silent thought line. Drew doesn't interfere. He doesn't comment publicly. But each round chips away at his certainty. Because Sami isn't surviving chaos. He's mastering structure. And Drew knows structure is one thing chaos can't save you from. So from the crown to the collision, Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre. When Sami is crowned King of the Ring, the moment isn't loud. It's grounding. There's no grand speech about destiny, no promises about changing the world. Sami simply stands in the ring, crown on his head, breathing in the moment like someone who knows exactly what it cost to get there. Drew McIntyre watches from a distance. He doesn't interrupt the celebration. He doesn't storm the ring. Drew waits until the following week when Sami is standing alone. No crown, no confetti, just a man again. That's when Drew finally speaks. Drew doesn't yell. He doesn't insult. He states a fact. He reminds Sami that belief has failed 12 times. 12 matches, 12 losses. Drew tells Sami King of the Ring doesn't change math. Structure doesn't rewrite history. And at SummerSlam, Sami will lose for the 13th time. Not because Drew hates him, but because reality doesn't bend. Sami listens. He doesn't interrupt. And that's what unsettles Drew. Sami responds calmly. He acknowledges the record. He doesn't argue it. He doesn't try to explain it away. Instead, he tells Drew that those 12 losses were necessary because every one of them taught him something Drew never noticed. He tells Drew that this time he isn't chasing belief. He's chasing it with discipline. For the first time in years, Sami says he isn't asking Drew to believe him. He says he's ready to outlast him. Over the next few weeks, Drew escalates the pressure without touching Sami. He sits at commentary during Sami's matches. He times Sami's victory. He points out mistakes afterwards. Drew keeps insisting that Sami's confidence is just denial wearing her crown. But Sami never snaps. When Drew says 13, Sami says 1. One night, one match, one outcome that rewrites everything. Their promos never turn violent. No pull-apart brawl, no cheap attacks. That absence of chaos becomes the story. Drew is used to opponents trying to provoke him. Sami refuses to play that game. Instead, Sami leans into preparations. He studies Drew. He talks openly about the Claymore, not with fear, but with familiarity. He mentions Hell in a Cell, Clash at the Castle, WrestleMania, the Cage, not to mock Drew, but to show that he understands the journey. Sami frames SummerSlam not as a moment, but as the final exam of everything Drew has taught him by beating him 12 times. That's when Drew's confidence begins to show crack. Because Drew's control has always depending on opponents panicking first, Sami doesn't. Sami respects Drew. And that respect denies Drew the emotional leverage he's always relied on. And the final face-to-face before SummerSlam, Drew repeats the line one last time. 13. Sami finally smiles. He tells Drew that 13 isn't a curse, it's a conclusion. He says that Drew taught him the world isn't fair, but he also taught him that chaos eventually exhausts itself. And when it does, the man who can still stand, still think, still believe, wins. They shake hands, not in sportsmanship, but in acknowledgement. At SummerSlam, there will be no interference, no chaos, no excuses. Just a champion who mastered control and a challenger who learned how to survive it. And when the bell rings, both men know one of them is about to be proven wrong. So SummerSlam, the end comes when control finally meets his limit. Drew McIntyre connects with a Claymore, clean, center of the ring, the kind that has ended countless matches before Sami Zayn doesn't roll out. He doesn't crumble, he kicks out. Drew doesn't argue with the referee, he doesn't look shocked, he adjusts. Sami fires with a blue thunder bomb, he holds a cover, Drew kicks out, and now it's Sami who has to recalibrate. Drew strikes again, a second Claymore, harder, sharper. This time it feels inevitable. Sami kicks out at the last possible split second. The crowd erupts, not in disbelief, but in realization. Something is changing. Drew goes for the kill. Another Claymore. Sami ducks. Drew stumbles, rises, and instinctively retreats to the corner. The place he's ended careers. Sami doesn't hesitate. Haluva kick. Drew collapses but doesn't fall away. Sami pulls him back, places him back in the corner just like he did to Jey Uso at WrestleMania a couple of years ago. Second Haluva kick. Sami lifts him. Blue Thunder Bomb. 1, 2, 3. There's no chaos, no interference, no injustice. Sami doesn't celebrate immediately. He sits in the ring exhausted, overwhelmed, not because he can't believe it, because he understands it. 12 losses led here. Belief didn't collapse, it endured. Drew McIntyre sits in the corner, staring forward, no anger, no protest, just the weight of the realization. For the first time since 2020, Drew McIntyre was not robbed. He was beaten. Sami offers a hand. Drew looks at it for a long moment, then accepts it, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. Belief didn't cheat control. It outlasted it. Drew, on the other hand, is left with one question. What happens when the world doesn't betray you and you still lose? So what do you think? I know it was quite a long booking room. So what do you think? Let me know in the comment section.